Hey everybody, Cody Menz here, doing a review for the Bat Chat Bourrasque, which is a new Tier 8 French Premium Medium Tank coming out in a marathon very soon here on Friday, basically tomorrow. Community contributors got it a little early, and this is my second take of a review because the stats changed a little bit at the last second. And yeah, I'm going to do a quick little breakdown. You can get a 3D style from this tank through the marathon. This video is specifically going to be about the review of the tank and if I like it, is it worth getting, whether it's through the marathon or at a later date. You know, the style does look pretty cool though from the marathon. Now, for those watching this right away, I'm going to be doing a review of, or not a review, a giveaway for this tank tonight on Twitch, you know, February 20th here, about 8 p.m. Eastern time. It'll start a little bit into the stream. If you would like a chance to win this tank, first and foremost, get that out of the way. For everybody else, what I'm going to do a quick breakdown of this tank. I'm going to play a battle in it. Hopefully it's a decent battle, and that'll be kind of the video. So if you want to skip to the gameplay, kind of forward ahead. But my breakdown of this tank, I'm going to kind of focus on its stats, and you can kind of see comparisons here. This tank, 360 damage per shot with 2 shells, and they fire 2 seconds, you know, in between. Pretty freaking awesome. Penetration, you're going to see a lot of people complaining about this. You know, it is classified as a medium tank, but it plays more like a light tank. I feel like they classified it as a medium for crew training purposes for the Bat Chat 25T line, and potentially to make it stand out a little bit more because it does change the gameplay. I'll get to that as I go down the stats. Now, 190 millimeters for the standard round, the premium / special shell 240, which again, people were like, the penetration sucks. It's a, you know, it's a medium tank. Well, if you compare it to light tanks where it fits more into that class, you can see it has pretty freaking good penetration for a light tank. So it's not really a negative in my opinion. Now the 360 damage per shot is freaking awesome that you have that, and you just need to hit 2 shells. If you compare that to the Bat Chat 12T that has 170 damage, it has to hit all 4. You're exposing yourself longer in this tank compared to the Bourrasque, and the Bourrasque is basically pumping out more damage faster, so that is nice. Now the gun traverse, so your turret moving around, you know, and being able to track targets is awesome. Only the EBR 75 in this comparison is better. And you basically blow, say, Progetto or Lorraine out of the water, and this thing is nice. Again, it plays more like a light tank. Gun depression is a little bit disappointing, but it's not that bad when it comes to you're going to be zipping around and stuff. This isn't exactly like a ridge fighter, so it's not a great stat, but also it's not the worst thing in the world considering how this tank typically plays. But it does limit you compared to the other tanks that have at least 8 degrees of gun depression. One big thing to point out, and you know, just a little bit of advice here as well. So aiming time, 3.36 seconds. Again, this is just 100% crew, no equipment. Does have camouflage on the tank, so, but no crew skills. 3.36 seconds is really freaking long. There's also 0.4 accuracy. You're gonna see a lot of people like, oh my god, this thing sucks. The accuracy, it might have damage, but the freaking accuracy. The soft stats, the on-the-move accuracy while you're moving and turning your turret are some of the best in the game from just feeling when it comes to the feeling of those. And your aiming circle doesn't really bloom much while you're moving on the move, which is really nice. It's probably not EBR 75 levels where those things are super accurate as of the making of this video, but your aiming circle isn't blooming as much. So equipment wise, I recommend vertical stabilizer, optics, and also ventilation. Ventilation will help a little bit, you know, with the reload time, view range, and a little bit with all the other little gun stats and stuff. But I would not put a gun laying drive, because if you think about how you're playing the Bourrasque as a light tank and mobile, you're moving around, you're not going to be stopping and just sitting there and load, you know, basically aiming in. And a gun laying drive wouldn't basically fix this 3-second value much. It would still be high in around 3 seconds. So you're better off having, you know, the vertical stabilizer, the vents, and the optics, because the on-the-move accuracy is so good, especially with the vertical stabilizer, that the aiming time, even though it noticeably is slow because of that long aiming time, it's not that bad because you're not going to be getting below, you know, 0.4, 0.39 depending on your crew. anyway, to where your starting circle is not that huge and it's, you know, not going down super small. So I don't think there's much of a reason to have it. It does limit you at fighting at long distances because it's a crapshoot what you're shooting, but this tank shouldn't be sniping anyway. Just thinking the amount of times you snipe in, you know, another tier 8 light tank, say like the Bat Chat 12T, not very often. Now the DPM's pretty decent, you know, when you take into account the high alpha with the 2 shots. It has a little bit less DPM than a Progetto, a little bit less than the EBR, but higher than, say, the Lorraine 40T, the Bat Chat 12T. DPM feels nice, honestly, with the alpha, you know, and alpha and the 2 shots, so you don't have to expose yourself as much. It's really, it feels nice. It feels great. It feels really strong without being inherently broken with that slight reduction of long range reliability, the slightly lower, basically, gun depression as well. Hit points here, a lot of people are going to point out, oh my god, the hit points suck if you just compare it to medium tanks. It's really freaking good for a light tank, which this tank plays closer to. So matchmaking wise, you will be matched up against mediums, but as far as playing on the battlefield, the hit points are actually great. Like, I like this thing having higher hit points, because you wish sometimes that your light tanks had higher hit points, and this thing does have it. Now, it does have some downside with the camouflage for being a medium, which I'll get to. No armor whatsoever, surprises nobody. The specific power is pretty nice when you compare it to mediums, but it is a little bit low for a light tank. And the high top speed is pretty decent, but again, you know, some lights will beat you out, some won't, but most are pretty much higher than this. So mobility is a little bit lower than most light tanks, but higher than medium tanks. So it's a nice little in-between. Traverse speed's pretty good here. It's not mind-blowingly good, but it is, say, better than like Lorraine 40T, where you can notice the low traverse on that when you're going top speed. So, you know, traverse speed could be a little bit better, but, you know, you don't notice it too much because it's still a pretty darn good value. Now, last but not least, these 2 values here. Camouflage. The camouflage on this tank stationary is pretty awesome. As you see here, very similar to the Bat Chat 12T. A little bit less than the EBR 75 with, you know, all the base stats here. Same with the ELC 90. Now, being a medium tank, the downside is moving around. You do lose some camouflage. You don't have the same value for stationary and moving like light tanks do. So you kind of pay a little bit for having that higher HP. And also you have 10 meters view range higher than the light tanks here, or most light tanks, because like the EBR 75 has 310. But that does kind of offset the slightly higher camouflage that light tanks have. So, you know, it all comes down to like what equipment, you know, and crew skills and stuff like that that lights and you are going to have. But it's kind of a wash in a way when you're stationary. But moving around, the light tanks will be a little bit better off just because they don't have that penalty. Because the difference between, you know, 17.5 and, you know, say 25 here, that 10 meters of view range probably won't matter. They'll still outspot you a little bit, albeit not by much. But you'll be a little bit stronger if you are stationary versus them. So that's kind of nice. Alright, anyway, quick little breakdown, and I'm gonna, you know, hop into the tank and see if I can get a decent fight for you guys here. Honestly though, like, is this tank worth it? I wouldn't buy it, you know, full price in the marathon, obviously, because they're really expensive, but like any marathons, reasonably most people can get, you know, up to like 50% to 70% off, and getting past that and getting it entirely for free, oh my freaking god, I want to kill myself. I just got mines in a higher tier battle and it's encounter mode. Anyway, yeah, we're going with it. We're going with it here. I'm gonna double tap 2 though, because I'm a filthy little premium spammer. This tank though, awesome. I played it a ton on my live stream. Let me remember to swap myself and teleport myself over here very poorly. And I played it a lot on my live stream last night, and honestly this tank is fun. It feels different. Even with the lower DPM, since the first day they gave it to us, which looking back they definitely needed to reduce that DPM because this thing would have been broken. Like, this tank is just pure fun. Like, you have to like light tanks, you have to like mobile tanks, you know, stuff like that. It is difficult to play, where it's not the easiest thing. That's the only downside is, you know, just say your average player, you might have difficulties playing this because you know, you do have to use that mobility. You don't have that armor to work with, but the gun just pumps damage out. You know, 730 damage here, and you only have to hit 2 shots, which is awesome. It scares some tanks sometimes, and it's really nice. And a reload is not that long in between. You do have to worry about module damage, you know, being basically a light tank. You know, everything's going to pen you, so do keep that in mind. And your HP, even though it is high, like, do remember you're at the lower end of medium tanks, so you definitely don't want to do anything super crazy, you know. But gameplay wise, I like this because with the high alpha and only having to worry about 2 shells, the nice thing that comes from that is you don't have to expose yourself that much while getting your damage. Whereas, you know, if you've caught me live or you've watched me throughout the years, I don't necessarily like, say, the Bat Chat 25T and stuff line. Occasionally they're okay to play. I don't like that you have to expose yourself as much, and as long as you do in those tanks, they get your damage. The 2 shots on this feels really nice, that you don't have to do that. So that's something, the best thing about this tank, that I think, you know, basically a lot of people are going to like. I'm a little bit concerned about pushing up here at this moment, but we're going to give it a whirl. Like, you know, nothing's riding on this, just, you know, my review battle here. But for the most part, though, this tank, I think it's going to perform well. Credit-wise, you know, it's going to earn credits because it can do some damage. And it's a fun tank to play. It feels different than the Lorraine 40T, it feels different than a Progetto, it feels different than the Bat Chat 12T. So they managed to pull off something that just isn't completely broken and overpowered, power creeping things. It's a very strong tank. Like, I do think this is one of the better tier 8s, especially if you kind of factor in both light and medium tanks and you compare it to, you know, light mediums and basically light tanks themselves. This tank is a stronger tank, but it doesn't inherently just completely power creep other things at the same time. Now, let's see if we can do this. 1, 2, and I missed it. Shot under the tank. That's because I was counting there and trying to show off. This tank, it's nice being able to just pop around. 2 seconds later, you can basically take off 50% of a tier 8's HP. Now, do note you have a chance to bounce because your penetration isn't, you know, out of this world freaking crazy like a Lorraine 40T. Your accuracy isn't the best either, so there are some downsides. But relatively speaking, it's a pretty good gun when it comes to that playstyle. I should have taken that shot here. Oh, yep. Cody, you're screwing up here, good buddy. I wish I didn't take that first shot. Overall, though, again, like, this isn't going to be a tank that everyone can excel at because, you know, it is a light tank / medium, so that gameplay isn't the easiest to play. But for someone that doesn't always like playing lights, especially kind of tier 8 and under because the guns lack a little bit of reliability, I like this thing. I feel like the gun is the main selling point of this. Obviously, you have like the mobility, a little bit of camouflage alongside of that, but I feel like the gun really makes this tank because it's different. With only 2 rounds, and it's not like the EBR 75's 2-round gun, the 2 rounds really kind of set it apart with that high alpha, but the accuracy does balance it out by forcing you to you know, basically making smart decisions on when to push in, you know, when to basically get that damage, and not allowing you to really use it at range as much as you might like sometimes. So hopefully this video, you know, kind of helped you out in your decision if you're kind of on the fence on whether to pick this tank up, or if you're on the fence on whether to do the marathon, you know, 100%. But, like, honestly, the one thing I always say with premium tanks is, you know, once you have some of them, you know, the credit earning potential is obviously a thing, but once you have, you know, say 1, 2, or 3, you're mainly going for, is the tank fun to play? Is it unique? The crew training, stuff like that. So this obviously is a good crew trainer for the Bat Chat 25T line, you know, the French mediums. Uniqueness factor, it does play differently, like a tank that you can compare it to is the AMX 13105 in a sense. Obviously that tank has one more shell, but this kind of plays like a tier 8 version of that, and you know, it's a little bit different since it is a medium and the camouflage and stuff like that, but it does feel like that tank kind of, and I actually really like playing that tank. It's not always the most effective, and like with this tank you will struggle if you come across, excuse me, got hiccups, you will come across higher tiers and like heavy armor and stuff like that. You will struggle a little bit with that, like a lot of lights. So this thing does trend towards that, you know, light tank category while being classified as a medium. But in my opinion, fun tank, it's unique. So if you already own, you know, other premium tanks, you're not really going to have something exactly like this at the tier. And, you know, it makes you want to play it because the gun is really fun. And that's the main kind of selling point for this. And even though there are some downsides, hopefully in the beginning of the video when you're listening to my breakdown, I kind of explained those downsides, you know, like the accuracy and aiming time. I don't feel like is that much of a negative because the on the move accuracy, as you saw in that battle, was not very, it wasn't blooming, it wasn't gigantic. So it's not that big of a downside in my opinion. And you know, the penetration low for a medium, it's high for a light tank if you compare it to the playstyle of that. So it's a really sweet tank. I feel like balance wise, you know, it is a really good tank. It's really strong, but it's not inherently just, you know, power creeping everything. Obviously it's probably gonna beat up a little bit on the Bat Chat 12T, even though they are different classes, so on and so forth. But I feel like the Bat Chat 12T is a little bit weak right now anyway. So anyway, thank you very much for watching this. Good luck with the marathon again tonight if you're watching this February 20th 2020 here. That's actually a lot of 2s and 0s I just noticed. Whew, probably missed that. In any event though, giving away one of these on Twitch tonight starting 8 p.m. Eastern time. It'll be somewhere in the middle of my stream, the giveaway. Otherwise, you know, hopefully you like this review, or if you don't want to pick this tank up, at least you know how to counter this tank and its strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.